So today's presentation is Stay Connected, Stay Prepared for MRC volunteers. This presentation will discuss the importance of local communication systems and social connections before, during, and after a disaster. Communications in a disaster represents the ability to access, understand, and respond to disaster messages and inform others, increasing everyone's ability to prepare, survive, and recover from disasters. I'm going to pass it over to Mike Magner now to give a brief introduction of our wonderful presenter.
Good evening, everyone. So as Becky said, I'm Mike Magner. I'm our state volunteer coordinator for the MRC program. And first of all, I want to thank you all for participating in tonight's training. Without our wonderful MRC volunteers, this program would not be anything at all. So we do appreciate all of your efforts and your willingness to learn. And with that, I'm excited to announce tonight's speaker. Fernando Tirado is our local health emergency coordinator for the Chesterfield Health District, and he's been in that role since August of 2023. He has nearly 30 years of experience in public health, mainly in New York State. But the last 10 years has been focused on community health resiliency and post-disaster recovery projects. He has 3 grown children with his wife, Karen, and loves camping, hiking, and outdoors in general. And with that, I'll turn it over to Fernando. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you, Mike and Becky. Appreciate that. So let me get started here with sharing the presentation. Okay, so today is talking about staying connected and staying prepared. What does that mean? And how we could use that to help communities build and deploy communication models to foster resiliency and social connections. So I know many of you may have heard about resiliency and social connections, and it's sometimes thrown around as a buzzword, but I want to take this opportunity to say that we're going to go a little bit deeper into what that means and why it's important. Oops. Okay. So we're going to discuss a couple of concepts here today. Communication as a health resiliency and social capital tool, communication as a form of equity, and then 2 specific projects, one called Staying Connected and the other one called Staying Prepared, and how all of these concepts together can help to foster well-being in communities. So first we'll start with communication as resiliency, how social connections impact community health resiliency. And when we talk about communication as health resiliency, we're talking about the ability for people to use local assets and their social capital to strengthen community public health and healthcare systems for improving physical, emotional, and social health. And this is important because it helps them to withstand, adapt, and recover from adversity, whether that adversity is a single fire home or whether it's a hurricane. And so these things can scale up, and communication can scale up. We know that communications in disasters is important. The ability to access, understand, and respond to disaster messages and inform others increases everyone's ability to prepare, survive, recover from a disaster. And then we talk about communication with those who are at risk. When we usually say at risk, we're referring to people's who are considered access and functional needs. But there are other things that we need to include. In addition to the ability to understand emergency communications and take care of oneself, 2 other factors increase risk in disasters and emergency. The first one is exposure. How often are you exposed to somebody who is sick or to conditions that make you or that put you at risk? And how susceptible are you? What is your predisposition to being harmed or to becoming sick? And so we want to elevate communication as a wellness technique, right? We know that communities can use various models to conduct wellness checks on members before, during, and after a disaster or emergency to promote resilience and recovery. I can assure you that folks in Western Carolina, North Carolina, and Southwest Virginia were not for communication, their help would have been delayed even further. So that's just a brief example of why communication is important. Other benefits include human interaction, the ability to gather on the ground information and relay important information, and the creation of a list of stakeholders willing to act. It's important to note that communication is also a form of engagement, right? We talk to each other all the time. We talk to our friends, our family, our loved ones, our colleagues, to our mentors or to our mentees. And that engaging individuals to take an active part in protecting their health and each other's wellness strengthens the entire community. And so we'll jump now into improving communications. And what are those collaborations and how do they promote communication and resiliency? So we know that we often communicate across various social factors. Sometimes those are socioeconomic, based on socioeconomic status, household composition and disability. That could include the elderly, race, ethnicity, and language proficiency, and housing and transportation or the lack thereof. We know that there are lots of communication barriers, and the following are potential barriers to communicate in an emergency and to forward response messages. Cultural barriers, using words that may have a different meaning to groups in your community, and it can lead to perceived restrictions on who may receive the information, right? Culture doesn't just mean people that speak a different language. It can mean various cultural upbringings that people have. Language obviously is the languages spoken throughout the community. Comprehension, right? Somebody who may have, only have a ninth grade reading level may not be able to expect to understand a lot of technical jargon, a lot of information that uses acronyms, that uses, work speak. And so we want to make sure that we write and communicate in the most simple and clear way possible. There are some social and structural barriers, right? Residents face real or perceived inequities due to race, ethnicity, perceived status, income, or other characteristics. And I say real or perceived because we don't know what people are thinking. Why do those structural barriers exist? We do know that, for instance, we have people who live in enclaves or people who don't have a home. And so they are exposed to the elements. And those are some real social and structural barriers to communication. People with disabilities, such as hearing or eyesight, and knowing what limitations may affect their ability to receive messages and respond. If you have a post on social media, but people can't read because of a sensory disability, then you have to find other ways to communicate with them. And access to where messages are delivered or the means to receive them, such as having a cell phone or even internet access. Internet access is only a few decades ago was just considered a luxury, and now it's considered a necessity to receive messages. And so I want to talk about some communication examples that I have worked with other groups to create for their local communities. And the first one are wellness checks. Wellness checks are where we have volunteers calling residents maybe once a week for about 20 minutes and providing them with information, resources, and meaningful social connections. These communications are tailored to individual needs to increase buy-in and trust. One example that I used was we created a series of wellness checks at my previous job where we were talking to people about heat and heat exhaustion and what to look out for when the days were really hot. But when COVID hit, that communication base that we built over the last 3 years was used almost exclusively for providing people with tailored information about COVID. And where we may have reached 1,800 people a year previously to talk to them about heat, we reached 5,000 people in 2 weeks because we had built trust with them. And you are not building trust with people overnight, right? All relationships move at the speed of trust. And because we work for government agencies, it's even harder for people to have trust in us. So you have to, and I say this all the time, you have to spend social capital to earn social capital. The next communication example that we have are community call rooms. These are structured check-ins for emergency preparedness purposes, and they tend to communicate the same message to all participants. So I also belong to a group where every Monday between 8 and 10 a.m., we do a radio check, and that radio check is all about 30 seconds. Where are you? How are you? Is everything okay? And everybody checks in, and then every half hour, people receive a message from whoever's the network controller, letting them know about community events, about trainings that are available. So this is a good way to do team building as well as to check in on one another. Before you engage in any activity, I like to share this diagram, which is called the accountability pyramid. If you're going to build out a program, especially one that revolves around communication, you need to know what your team's capabilities are before you start the project. Are your members capable of the assignment? Do they have a cell phone? Is it reliable? Do they have a place where they can call you from safely? Are the systems and resources available in place? Excuse me for 1 second. It's the weather alert radio. Are systems and resources available or in place? Do you have a system to communicate with one another? Do you know your roles and responsibilities in that accountability pyramid? And are your goals and objectives clear? And I say this, or I point this out, because members are the foundation of your project. So if your members don't understand what the goals, roles, and systems are about, then your project is not going to be successful. And so I want to dive into the first project that I mentioned about. It's called Stay Connected, and how resiliency and social connections with those most at risk to MRCs, right? And this is a program that we did primarily with seniors, those 65 and older. Some of them were homebound, some of them had mobility issues, and because of that, they were isolated. And I want to talk about the impacts of social isolation. Many older adults and individuals with disabilities and their caregivers are often socially isolated. We also know that poverty, illness, and language barriers can contribute to a greater sense of isolation and poorer health outcomes. And finally, during the pandemic and subsequent lockdowns, many other people became socially isolated, especially young people. And this was a significant contributor to mental stress. And so, it'll take a while. It'll probably take another decade before people have overcome that, the effects of those lockdowns and the social isolation that went along with it. But we see the effects now, right? We see that reading and test scores have not gone up. More people, especially seniors, report isolation than ever before. And this is a way that we could combat against this on a hyper-local level. And why, right? We know that social connections are important. It's compared of shared information, trust, and a culture that supports the common good. And that you're not going to just build social connections. It's like everything else that you have to build. It's a process. But with social connections, that's an ongoing process. There is no end to the communications and the relationships that you form with people. You maintain those communications. It's a process, not a goal. And social support and networks have been linked to the maintenance of health and coping with stress and illness, right? People who have a social infrastructure, whether that is a house of worship or strong family ties, they live longer and happier lives than those who are socially isolated. And we can see this a lot in older males, where the suicide rate of individuals who are over 55 and male and socially isolated is much greater than the nationwide average. So this activity of fostering community connections is based on creating and managing a volunteer network to identify and engage residents to foster social connectivity. And this network could be anywhere. This network could be your church group or an after-work club. It could be anything. And the idea is that you develop these relationships between volunteers and participants on a weekly basis for a limited time to reduce their feelings of isolation during non-emergencies. But during emergencies, or before, during, and after emergencies, you activate these networks to conduct wellness checks on those vulnerable individuals and provide them with timely information, but they may also provide you with timely information. And so what we ask our volunteers to do is to let's create this application to see who's interested in this program, and include some sort of reference form and a signed agreement to abide by network guidelines, right? So if you were going to do this for your group, let's say it was a church, maybe it could be a little bit less formal. If we were to do it as MRCs, then we would have to have these agreements and create these guidelines that people would abide by. The Department of Behavioral Health and Disability Services actually has a program very similar to this, but their program has a lot of network guidelines, including all their participants need to be fingerprinted. They need to commit to 6 months at a minimum, and sometimes that turns off volunteers. So can we find a happy medium between those types of extremes? We know that networks the networks can provide volunteers the resources like training materials, call logs, feedback forms, and a support system in case one of their calls becomes very emotionally heavy. And that volunteers primarily initiate the calls with participants, community participants. So it's important for the networks to address any concerns early, right? And then anybody that is on the receiving end of these calls, that we call participants, we need to obtain their consent, and they need to consent to the network guidelines, right? So the volunteer is not there to do shopping with you or to be a part of a gripe session. This is strictly a wellness check, and it may include some conversation, but it's usually limited to 20 to 30 minutes at most. The network and the volunteers document the feedback from their communications with empathy and maintain consideration for the needs of participants. So if, for instance, somebody is hard of hearing, the ability to speak loudly and clearly and slowly so that people could understand you is one of those considerations. We want to remind participants that this process is voluntary and they can choose to opt out at any time, and that participants can initiate calls under limited circumstances, right? Again, this isn't, a call at 10 p.m. or 2 in the morning asking you, if they could do if you could do a favor for them. This is, we have a tornado watch, or this is, there is a storm coming. Are you prepared? And those are the limited, circumstances in which a participant might call to find out what to do next. The next program is more for like a closed group. This is called Staying Prepared. And it's really about building a community culture to respond to emergencies. So I know that every one of us is a part of VVHS or is part of or has received HON alerts or alerts from your local jurisdictions. And that's great, but it's a one-way automated communication. There is nobody that I can ask questions of, or, other than responding to the message, I can't forward any inquiries. And a community culture is a lot different. It is a two-way form of communication, and it is about creating a team that knows communication protocols, knows how to respond in an emergency. But there are different types of community cultures, right? So the first question is, who is this culture for? Is it for friends and families? Is it for your neighbors, coworkers, or is this for part of a radio group or an organization? Things that you want to do with this project are gather contact information and update it frequently, determine the call sequence. Is it an outgoing message? In other words, a group message, or an incoming message where everyone checks in individually, or some combination of both. You want to design and assign the call tree to stakeholders, and then test your call tree as frequently as possible. As I mentioned before, I belong to a call tree group where every Monday morning from 8 to 10, I call in, and it takes about 30 seconds of my day. And I've done it for so many years now, it's just a habit. And it feels good to be able to speak to friends and colleagues that I've helped to build emergency networks with over the last decade or so. In this community call tree, you could customize your messages. Do you want to talk about individual emergency preparedness programs or techniques? Are there organizational messages that you want to share? You know, for instance, a training or a workshop or a presentation that's happening later in the week. Are there public education events or activities that you want your members to be made aware of? Are there non-emergency public health messages or social or other social community events you want to share with your team? Whenever you do a call tree, it's more than just the call. It's about making sure that everyone knows their role and that you're documenting your test to see how much you could continue to improve, right? So when we say document the call down, somebody whoever's the network controller on that week would be assigned to initiate the call down. They would write down the test dates, time, the actual start and completion times, the number of percentage of people who responded, the response time for each person, and any additional notes. And what we've done in this previous program and this previous call tree is we rotate whoever is the network controller for that week. So every week, or I would say every 12 weeks, somebody else is or you would be assigned to initiate the call down, depending on the size of the group. And I think the MRC program could really benefit from developing community call trees, especially on a regional level, because then, there's a lot of people who can participate and who can get better at using certain software and hardware to communicate. Whenever you create a community call tree and you start testing it and documenting it, you want to identify the gaps. What elements worked? Were members reached effectively? Was anyone left out? Who needs to be added? And then there are other ways that you could look at improving your call tree plan. And then how do you improve, right? We don't want to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And so you should discuss amongst your team members how your process worked or what needs to improve. What are the ways to address it? Do we need more training? Do we need more support? Do we need to include more members? Who's responsible for making any of those changes, and when will those gaps be updated, and where will the documentation be stored? And if you're following along and you're familiar with exercises, this is going to start looking like an after action report and an improvement plan, if you haven't caught on to that just yet. And so I want to wrap up my presentation about how community well-being is a public health intervention, and that by using different types of communication systems, we can foster that well-being. And so in order for us to better address the public health and medical needs of individuals and communities in disasters, those people's everyday systems and social connections need to improve and strengthen. Not only are people affected by isolation, social isolation, but that social isolation leads to so many other things, especially among young people, whether that is experimenting with drugs or alcohol, whether that is experimenting with other risky behaviors. For individuals who are socially isolated, they may not have a support system, they may not have somebody to talk to, and so if we ever talk about public health and doing interventions, we have to include social connections and community well-being. We can't just put a Band-Aid on something and then not commit to helping people. And so well-being connects people, resources, and systems, and is the foundation for resilience and preparedness. We know that by strengthening social connections, it helps people face everyday challenges, as well as extreme events like disasters. And social connections promote flourishing by meeting the health, wellness, and preparedness needs of at-risk populations and the people or the caregivers that serve them. And then finally, I want to talk about what happens at the community level, right? When we talk about well-being as a public health intervention. That means that we have to include the community and engage them as trusted community partners. When we're talking about this project, it goes beyond traditional health and medical systems, right? Oftentimes, going to the doctor is maybe an hour wait for a 10-minute visit, and then you're out the door. And so when we talk about public health interventions, social connections, building social connections goes beyond that. This is what I'd like to call transformative public health as opposed to transactional public health. And then finally, building social connections is an important community preparedness and long-term recovery action. We know that people who are affected by disasters, and if their conditions before a disaster were not good, for instance, there was a community with high poverty, high rates of isolation, high rates of high school dropouts, their ability to resist a disaster is greatly diminished, but their recovery is also greatly diminished. It might take them, 10, 15 years to recover, as opposed to a community that has resources, as opposed to a community that has connections, that could bounce back in a year. And so that's why I stress, that social connectedness and communications is that long-term recovery action. We can help people address their problems so that they don't linger in their problems. And with that, I want to say thank you.